Welcome to another English Solutions for Business and Life video. Today, we'll be looking at the Unit 8 from the Global Intermediate book and the grammar section. We will look at 4 different topics from this grammar section. The first one is how we use would. Then we will look at second and third conditionals. And lastly, we will look at past modals of deduction. So let's begin. First, let's look at the verb would. We use would for different things. We can use would to talk about situations in the hypothetical future. So, things that haven't happened but are possible that could happen. We also use it to talk about habitual actions that happened in the past. We use it to make offers, make polite requests, and also to give advice. Advice is with a C. Okay, so let's look at some examples of these different sentences. These different uses of the word would. An example could be the question, would you eat it? Let's imagine you're talking with someone and you're talking about some very unusual dishes. Maybe something that is not normal to eat in your country. So they could ask this question, if you saw this dish or somebody gave it to you, would you eat it? That's a hypothetical situation in the future. Now, we also use it to talk about habitual actions in the past. What does this mean? That means actions that were habits or normal to do in the past. For example, when I was little, I would play with tazos. That's an habitual action that you might have been doing in the past. That means when maybe you were little. It's something that was normal back then. Now, there are other ways we can use these. For example, to make offers, make polite requests, and we will look at how to give advice with would. First, how to make offers. Would you like some water? That's an offer. Would you like some water? Another sentence, to make requests, another use. And we can look at another example. Would you turn the AC on, please? Remember to say please after you make a polite request. Otherwise, it wouldn't be polite. But you can start it by using would. Would you turn the AC on, please? And another use, as you saw here, it's to give advice. To give advice. Let's look at an example. You sound really ill. I would stay in bed today. This could be an advice, even though it's something that I'm saying in a hypothetical situation I would do. It would be an advice. The person could take it as something said to them, even though indirectly. That's how you might use would to give advice. Another note that is important to take is that when you use the apostrophe D, like here on the top corner, it could mean both would and had. So you can, you might want to be careful when using that, but they both can be written like this. Now let's look at the next part of the grammar section. Now let's look at the second conditional. Here we're going to look at the structure, but we're not going to look at specific examples because the time doesn't allow us to look at an example for each of the rules. But we will look at some rules, and I'm going to say out loud an example sentence. First, let's look at the structure. The if clause, here we have it. It's the if and then the past simple. That's a part of the sentence. That is the conditional. It's if, then a verb in past simple, and then the main clause would be the subject. It could be I, you, we, he, they, so on. We could use one of these three verbs: would, might, or could, and or their negative forms. And then at the end, after that, we would add the infinitive verb from the main clause. Remember, this is the if clause and this is the main clause. Now let's look at how we can use these. First, hold on. Okay, first let's look at the first example. An unreal or unlikely future situation. That means that we use the second conditional to talk about an unreal future situation. And a situation, that is unlikely or almost impossible to happen. For example, listen to this. If I didn't have to work, I'd go to the beach today. That's the sentence. But I have to work, so I won't go to the beach. That's an unreal situation and an unlikely that I won't have to go to work. Now let's look at another example or another rule. Another use is when we use the past form of the verb in the if clause, the one I highlighted over here, we can use it to refer to an unreal situation in the present or future. For example, you might hear someone say, if I had time, I would do this or I would do that. But that's the past if. If I had time, past form of have. That means the person doesn't have time, so they can't do the action that they say they would do. And the last one is would, and then the infinitive verb. As you saw over here, you could use would, might, could, or not, the not form of these verbs. And, well, when you were talking about the second conditional in the main clause. But if you use would and then the infinitive, that is specifying that what is happening, what you're saying, is the consequence of the unreal action. That means that the would and the infinitive, the action or the consequence, comes after this action. Okay? So that's it for the second conditional. Now let's look at the next part, the third conditional. Now let's look at the third conditional. The third conditional is very similar to the second conditional because, well, it's a conditional, but the tenses are different. As you can see, we use the past perfect and the past participle, and we also use the auxiliary verb to have in this tense. So let's look at the structure. First, we do the if clause, which will have the if and then the past perfect, or it could also be a had and a past participle, and then the subject and the rest, which is the main clause, the subject and the verb would, may, or could, they're not forms, followed by have and then the past participle. Now, when do we use these forms? Well, we use these forms when we're talking about an unreal past. We use the third conditional to talk about unreal situations in the past. For example, listen to the sentence. If he hadn't invented this machine, our lives would have been very different. If, and then the past perfect or the past participle after the verb to have. Again, if he hadn't invented this machine, our lives would have been very different. We're talking about an unreal situation in the past, something that didn't happen in the past. Now, we could also use the would have and then the past participle again to show that what we're saying is a consequence of the unreal action or the unreal situation that we saw that we mentioned in the if clause. For example, if they had found the cure earlier, many lives would have been saved. If they had found the cure earlier, many lives would have been saved. That means that didn't happen because the cure wasn't found earlier. Now that's it for the third conditional. Now let's look at another part of the grammar section. The next part is past modals of deduction. We use the past modals of deduction to talk about or to express how certain or uncertain we are about something that happened in the past. For example, we can show that we are very certain something happened, or very certain something didn't happen. To show that we are very certain something happened, we use must have been. Must have been. And then the past participle. For example, this must have been the Queen's thumb. That means we have proof that it is, so we're very certain it was. Now, if we're not very certain, we're unsure, we can use these three words: may, could, or might. They're negative forms, and then have. For example, the objects could have been used for religious purposes. I forgot, we also use past participle after have, which we use after these words. So the words may, could, or might, then have, and then the past participle. Again, the objects could have been used for religious purposes. And lastly, when we are sure or certain that something didn't happen, we use can't have and then the past participle. For example, the treasure can't have come from here. There is proof that it is somewhere else. That means we're sure that it didn't happen, or the past situation is not true. Okay, so those are all the past modals of deduction for this grammar section, for this unit. I hope it was easier now to understand them. And if you have any further questions, don't forget to ask your teacher about them. But that's it for this video. See you on the next video.